Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show where I finally got a webcam that's not glitching. And because of that, I can proudly, in the month of Pride, I can proudly show some skin. And hopefully, we're going to have a little bit of a good time. Now, here's the interesting thing. Did you notice that when a society is dealing with a calamity, it reflects it through art? Like, for example, during the Black Death. Horrible. But a lot of people were drawing, they were making songs, they were making music, a lot of art was reflecting the plight of society. Did you notice that? When the Americans went to Japan for the first time and they wanted to sell goods, and the Japanese were like, go away, Western man, we don't need your filth. And then the Americans came with the black ships, it's what they're called. It's something that scarred the Japanese for ages to come, and you get to see that in the art. The evil American ships coming and bringing bombardment to the Japanese ports. The Japanese people didn't know about steam technology back then. They didn't really understand how a ship can do such unimaginable destruction because they isolated themselves from the rest of the world. But my point is, when you bring certain calamity upon a nation, it usually gets reflected through art. And if you look at the United States, a lot of the comic books from the 90s, a lot of the movies from the 90s, a lot of American culture reflects the desperation that citizens have to deal with criminals. Like, you get Gotham, a city that's, infested with crime. The cops don't do anything. They eat their donuts. They sit in the car. They're corrupt. They're complacent. You get the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. By the way, they're making a remake, right? Streets are dangerous. Cops don't do anything. Cops sit in their car. They eat the donuts. They're complacent. They're corrupt. And you have, vigilantes. You got, this guy with a hockey mask going around and beating criminals. And then in the movies, RoboCop 2 is the one where you're getting closer to reality. You start understanding the problem where RoboCop is brainwashed by an HR lady in order to do sensitivity policing, right? He has to do sensitivity training. He's not allowed to get angry. He's not allowed to run over a red light. He's got 200 of these directives, seeking consensus, not stereotyping. And this makes him unable to do policing. And then you get other movies like Dirty Harry. You get video games like Streets of Rage. You get to notice this common theme that the American cities are filled with crime. And you get these video games and movies and TV shows just on and on and on for a couple of years until they stop. Why did they stop? Well, because the crime rates in a lot of these cities went down. The prosperity went up. The crime rate went down. And because of that, you don't really get to see all of this being promoted in Western media. But I think that will stop. And I think that will stop since yesterday, because you now get to see this ideology of criminal first. And I'm not exaggerating. When you see people like Cynthia Nixon, right, blue check mark on Twitter, that are saying that the CVS on my corner has started locking up basic items like clothing detergent. As so many families can't make ends meet right now, I can't imagine thinking that the way to solve the problem of people stealing basic necessities out of desperation is to prosecute them. So this lady, this señorita, lives in a place where apartments go up for millions of dollars. And if someone is nicking detergent from her store, I don't think that is a person that's impoverished. All right, señorita? I don't think that the poor people are going to the rich, wealthy areas to steal detergent. What I do think, however, is that Cynthia Nixon is lacking in a little bit of virtue, right? She didn't do her job. She didn't do her due diligence. She didn't go to a store, buy some detergent, and set up a table outside the store to give it away for free. She didn't give money to the homeless. She didn't contribute. She didn't help people in need. She didn't go to a hospital where you have sick children. So she's doing what is popular in 2021, and that is to go on Twitter and to have compassion for the criminals, because this is how you show how much you care. Okay, compassion for the shoplifters, because we all know that poor people commit crime, right? When I was poor, I don't know. I was being poured wrong. I was pouring, I guess, the wrong way. I didn't commit any crime, but I guess like I should have gone and took the detergent. What was I thinking? Okay, like this is like rich people detached from the poor lifestyle, explaining to the rest of us, she's poor-splaining how it's like to be a person in poverty and how we should have compassion for criminals. Now, she's not the only one. Right? Like you get like this entire vibe on Twitter that all cops, hashtag all of them, not a single exception, all cops are evil. Right? So fuck the police is the new mantra of the civilized, decent person. It's not like, okay, well, some cops are a problem, maybe we need to look. No, all of them. Okay? So what this causes is now that you get politicians like Chicago, for example, which has passed a very interesting legislation. Now, when I first saw it on CNN, I couldn't make sense of it because it was a little bit bizarre. It was, if you're a person running away from a traffic stop, from a traffic incident, the cops aren't allowed to chase you. And I'm thinking, like, how many times does that happen? Like, how many people run over a red light and they get on a foot chase with the cops? Like, they ran over a red light, the police tells them to stop, they stop the car, and then they run out of the vehicle. How many times does that happen? Okay, like, that is bizarre. But then I realized, okay, there must be something more. So I looked at the actual legislation, and what the actual legislation says is that the cops aren't supposed to stop people who commit something less than a Class A misdemeanor. So it's a little bit coded in legal jargon. You gotta think like, what on earth is something less than a Class A misdemeanor? Well, turns out that if you're in Chicago, you can rip off the purse from a woman, and unless the cop manages to catch you then, well, he's not going to catch you because you can run away. And the cop isn't allowed to follow. You can commit assault. You can break a store with. There's a lot of stuff that you can do. A surprisingly high amount, right? So now if you're the police officer, every time you see a criminal, you gotta consider like, do I do something about it or don't I do something about it? And the reality is that if you do something about it and you took it the wrong way, like let's say you think that the guy committed something serious, like above a Class A misdemeanor, but it happens that he didn't. So an example of this, let's say he steals the purse, and according to how much money is in the purse, it can be a Class A or it can be a below Class A. So if there's $1 million in the purse, okay, well, maybe there. If it's if it's $10,000 in the purse, then it is something above a Class A misdemeanor. If it's below $10,000, then it's not. So the cop makes a judgment call. He risks it, right? Now, here's the interesting part. This is what's fascinating. If the cop decides to pursue, then he can get fired. Okay, like then he can get on primetime news. He can go on CNN. Evil cop, chases poor criminal. Okay, if he does nothing, guess what happens? Nothing happens. If the cop looks the other way, he gets his paycheck. He can have, he can have a very comfortable life. Just looking the other way. Just deciding not to do anything. All of a sudden, the stereotype of the cop staying around in his car, munching on the donut, becomes reality. Now it kind of makes sense why in the 90s that stereotype was real. Because, yeah, no shit. If I were a cop, and on one hand, I get like bombarded with this sensitivity training and how to be nicer to criminals and blah, 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 blah. And if you don't do this, you get fired. Or you can just do nothing. Just sit in the car and eat the donut. While a woman is getting mugged right next to you, you got no responsibility. You don't have to do anything about it. Huh? So this is why the cops become corrupt. This is why the cops in Gotham comic books are corrupt. And you think, well, it's a comic book. What are you talking about? Yeah, it is a comic book. But as I mentioned, like, art is inspired from reality. I know the progressives love to put the cart in front of the horse, but in the real world, art doesn't create reality. Reality creates art. If art created reality, then Romania would be like America, because almost everything we like to listen to here is Americanized. We listen to American movie, we watch American TV shows, we play American video games. The only thing that we don't do, I guess, is we don't watch American sports. Who wants to watch baseball, am I right? I don't even know the rules of that. But other than that, Romania just consumes American entertainment, and for some reason, we're not like America. Right? So I don't think that art creates reality. What I do think is reality creates art. And I don't know why you get like this new ideology of putting criminals first and not thinking about their victims at all. Like not caring at all about the victims is something that I genuinely like don't understand what is going on. I don't think the people on the ground have the same opinion like the elites. I think this is elitism. Like, it's the type of people that don't live in high crime areas that have compassion for criminals, because if you look at the people on the ground, they want more policing rather than less. But their voices are muffled because now, it's all about representation and diversity and whatnot, so we give voices to the marginalized. But the marginalized just happens to be a person that happens to share the skin color, but is also a rich and well-connected person. Like, you're never going to hear from the average Joe. You're never going to hear from the average black American that happens to live with the criminals in the neighborhood. No, you're going to hear from some activist, from some person that managed to buy a large mansion. Those are the people that are going to speak to you, and they're going to tell you their ideology. It's not the person on the ground that's actually being affected by this. Never. Okay, you're going to hear from the corporations, you're going to be lectured by the people in the mainstream media and the corporate press, but you're not going to hear from the little guy. And I generally don't know why they're doing this. Okay, like, is it maybe because it's the correct talking points? Like, if you say the speech, everyone claps. Like, it's this type of thing that you have to say, and everyone agrees. Maybe it's part of that. Maybe it's a little bit more nefarious. Like, maybe they want to keep these people in poverty. Right? Why would you want, if you're the elites that rely on poor people voting and supporting for, why would you ever want them to get out of poverty? Right? Like, people who are poor are easily to control. Like, we know this since the medieval age. Like, the nobles knew that as long as the peasants are poor and starving, it's easy to control them. So maybe that is the case. Like, have high crime rates so they can't open businesses in the neighborhood, so that banks won't give loans if you want to open a business in an impoverished place. Maybe that's the reason. Because they keep pulling people out of prison nonstop to make it safer for the people from the prison, not for the people outside. But at the same time, they talk about locking people up who break the COVID measures. Right? So, locking up law-abiding citizens, putting out criminals onto the streets. Initially, they said that they're putting the criminals out because of COVID. Now they don't even have to make a reason for it. They're just doing it. Very bizarre. So I legitimately, like, I don't know. I don't know why they do it. But like, I hope this ideology doesn't come to the West. I hope they're not going to do it to the West, like over the ocean. I hope they're not going to do it in the European Union, because that would be a little bit concerning, right? By the way, like, it's very difficult for me to say, yeah, you know what, like, the cops do commit abuses and we have to look into it, when I'm giving ground to the people that are like, yeah, free the criminals, make sure that the criminals are being prosecuted. It's like, oh, Dios mío, what are you saying? Like I've yet to see a single person who lives in an impoverished neighborhood in a high crime area wanting less policing. Unless he's a criminal himself, okay? Like, they don't count. Like, if you're talking about a gang member, yeah, like, it's obvious he's going to want less policing. But I'm talking, like, just an average Joe that has a business. He opened a mom and pop store, and he's like, you know what we need? Less policing. Yeah. In a world where the rich get to have their own private security, gated communities and all of that, we're talking about less policing. Okay, yeah, it's interesting. I guess we're going to see some really nice movies coming soon. I guess we're going to see some really interesting comic books coming soon. Some very interesting video games. I guess Streets of Rage is going to have another sequel. Okay? I from the European Union can only watch and appreciate the art that's coming up. I'm glad I don't live in these neighborhoods. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the comment section.